You're looking at one of the most fascinating and unique lakes in the entire world. This blood red water, stretching as far as the eye can see, is one of Earth's most extreme environments. Water so alkaline it can burn human skin, temperatures so scorching they regularly exceed 60 degrees Celsius, and salt concentrations so intense they can preserve animals like ancient Egyptian mummies. Welcome to Lake Natron, a place so hostile to life that it can turn animals into stone, yet so perfectly adapted that it supports one of Africa's most spectacular wildlife phenomena. It's a chemical cauldron sitting in one of the most geologically active regions on Earth. Lake Natron is located in northern Tanzania, just 3 kilometers from the Kenyan border. The lake occupies the lowest point in the Great Rift Valley's eastern branch. It's a place where geology, chemistry, and biology collide to create something that seems more alien than terrestrial. So in this video, we'll take some time to explore how this lake came to exist, why it's essential to millions of flamingos, and how it sits on the intersection of some of the most dramatic geological processes on our planet. And as always, this is Ali and welcome back to Urban Atlas. Lake Natron occupies the floor of the Eastern Rift Valley, specifically the Gregory Rift, at an elevation of 610 meters above sea level. That might not sound particularly low, but in the context of the surrounding landscape, it's the bottom of a geological depression. To the south of the lake, the active volcano Old Doniyo Lengai rises 2,962 meters, nearly 2,500 meters above the lake's surface. And what makes this volcano special is that it's the world's only active carbonate volcano, spewing sodium carbonate lava that directly feeds the lake's extreme chemistry. Now, Lake Natron stretches 57 kilometers from north to south and reaches a maximum width of 22 kilometers. At 1,040 square kilometers, it's roughly the size of Hong Kong. But unlike that densely populated territory, Lake Natron supports virtually no permanent human settlement. Surprisingly, the lake is remarkably shallow for its size, averaging just 3 meters deep, with a maximum depth of only 5 meters during wet seasons. This shallow depth is crucial to understanding everything that makes Lake Natron unique, from its extreme temperatures to its chemical concentrations. Now, what makes this lake's geography really interesting is that it's not constant. During the dry season from June to October, the lake can shrink to less than half its wet season size. What remains is a landscape of exposed salt flats, crystalline formations, and hypersaline pools that create an almost Martian-like landscape. The surrounding landscape is equally extreme. The Rift Valley walls rise steeply on both sides, creating a natural basin that traps heat and prevents most rainfall from reaching the lake directly. Annual precipitation averages just 400 to 500 millimeters, most falling during brief, intense storms between November and May. And the lake's primary water source isn't rainfall at all. It's hot springs and alkaline streams flowing from the volcanic highlands. The Ewaso-Negiro River provides the main surface inflow, carrying dissolved minerals from volcanic rocks upstream. But there's no outflow. Lake Natron is what geographers call an endorheic lake. Water comes in, but the only way out is through evaporation. And this closed basin geography is fundamental to everything that follows. Every dissolved mineral that enters Lake Natron stays there, concentrating year after year, decades after decades, creating the chemical soup that defines this extraordinary place. So to understand Lake Natron, we need to understand one of Earth's most spectacular geological processes, the Great Rift Valley System. You see, the East African Rift System began forming approximately 35 million years ago when the African continent started splitting apart. Picture taking a piece of bread and slowly pulling it from both ends. Eventually, it tears down the middle. And that's essentially what's happening in Africa. And that tear runs right through Tanzania. And this process isn't smooth or uniform. Instead, the continent is pulling apart in a series of parallel rifts, creating a complex system of valleys, highlands, and volcanic chains. Lake Natron sits in the Gregory Rift, the eastern branch of this system, where the pulling forces have created a deep valley bounded by steep escarpments. Old Doniyo Lengai, just 20 kilometers south of this lake, is the key to understanding Lake Natron's chemistry. And this volcano is unique. Instead of erupting silicate lava like most volcanoes, it erupts carbonatite lava rich in sodium carbonate. And when this lava cools, it creates rocks composed largely of natural carbonatite, essentially crystallized baking soda. Rainfall and groundwater flowing over these rocks dissolve massive amounts of sodium carbonate, creating the alkalite streams that feed Lake Natron. And El Doniyo Lengai erupted as recently as 2008, sending fresh carbonatite lava flowing down its slopes. Each eruption adds a new alkaline material to the watershed, continuously feeding Lake Natron's extreme chemistry. In addition, this area also features extensive deposits of volcanic ash called tuff and various alkaline igneous rocks. And as these rocks weather, they release sodium, potassium, and carbonate ions into the water system. And beneath the lake, the geological activity continues. Hot springs around the lake's edges reach temperatures of 60 degrees Celsius, adding both heat and dissolved minerals to the water. These springs are fed by groundwater that has circulated deep underground, picking up minerals from volcanic rocks at high temperatures. And thus, the combination of active volcanism, hydrothermal springs, and the closed basin geography creates a perfect storm for extreme water chemistry. Every geological process here contributes to making Lake Natron one of the most chemically hostile environments on Earth. Now, interestingly, the geological forces that created Lake Natron continue today. The East African Rift is still actively spreading, about 6 to 7 millimeters per year. Over millions of years, this process will eventually split Africa into two separate continents. With a new ocean flooding the Rift Valley, Lake Natron sits at the future shoreline of this hypothetical ocean, making it a window into a continental breakup in action. Now, all of these geological processes turn Lake Natron into something intense. Its water chemistry is unlike almost anywhere else on Earth. We're talking about water so alkaline it's comparable to household bleach. Lake Natron's pH regularly exceeds 10.5, sometimes reaching as high as 12, comparable to household ammonia. To put that into perspective, a normal lake water has a pH around 7, while the ocean is slightly more alkaline at 8.1. Natron is approximately 10,000 times more alkaline than normal lake water. The chemistry isn't the only extreme thing. Natron regularly experiences some of the highest water temperatures recorded in any natural body of water. Temperatures routinely exceed 50 degrees Celsius and sometimes even can go up to 60 degrees in shallow areas. These are hot enough to cause severe burns to human skin within minutes. A combination of extreme heat and alkalinity creates water that's essentially caustic. Now, the lake is also quite famous for its color changes, and these are primarily due to its chemistry. The red and pink colors come from a halophilic bacteria and algae, microorganisms that thrive in high salt, high alkalinity environments. When chemical conditions are at their most extreme, the microbial populations explode, turning the water deep red or pink. And when conditions moderate slightly during wetter periods, the colors can shift to orange, yellow, or even green hues as different microbial communities start dominating. Perhaps most interestingly is that Lake Natron's chemistry creates natural mummification conditions. The high pH and salt content quickly dehydrate organic material, while the alkalinity prevents bacterial decomposition. Animals that die in or near the lake become calcified, creating airly preserved specimens that can last for years. And because of all of this, you might be thinking no animals could survive in Lake Natron's chemical hell. But you'd be wrong. The lake supports one of Africa's most spectacular wildlife phenomena. That's because Lake Natron is the primary breeding ground for East Africa's lesser flamingos, nearly 75% of the world's population, at roughly 2.5 million birds. They depend on this lake for reproduction. It seems impossible. How do flamingos not just survive but thrive in water that can burn human skin? Well, the answer here lies in evolution. You see, the flamingos have adapted to the lake's unique ecosystem. Lesser flamingos have evolved specialized feeding apparatus perfectly adapted to Lake Natron's extreme conditions. Their beaks contain fine filters that can extract microscopic algae and bacteria from the lake's caustic water, meaning the lesser flamingos are essentially living filters, perfectly adapted to harvest these microscopic organisms found within Lake Natron. Their specialized beaks and tongues create a pumping system that forces water through their fine filters, trapping the microorganisms while expelling the caustic water. These flamingos are extremely impressive. A single flamingo can filter up to 20 liters of water per day, extracting thousands of microscopic organisms. The high protein and lipid content of these microorganisms offer excellent nutrition, while the carotenoid pigments in the algae give flamingos their pink coloration. In addition, the lake's extreme conditions actually provide perfect protection for flamingo breeding. The caustic water and scorching temperatures keep most predators away, creating a safe nursery environment. Flamingos build their nests on islands of crystallized salt that emerge during the dry season. The timing here has to be perfect. Flamingos breed when water levels are low enough to expose nesting sites, but not so low that the chemistry becomes lethal even for adapted adults. This narrow window typically occurs during the transition between the wet and dry seasons. Remarkably, flamingos aren't the only large animals that use Lake Natron. Various waterbird species, including pelicans, storks, and ducks, visit the lake's edges where fresh water from hot springs dilutes the extreme chemistry. These areas create microhabitats with more moderate conditions for these birds. Tilapia also survive in the alkaline hot springs around the lake's perimeter. These fish have evolved remarkable tolerance for high temperatures and alkaline conditions, surviving in water that would quickly kill off most other fish species. And despite the hostile environment, Lake Natron sits within a landscape that has been home to human communities for thousands of years. Despite there being no settlements along its shores, the relationship between people and this extreme lake tells a fascinating story of adaptation, avoidance, and cultural significance. The area around the lake is the traditional territory of the Maasai people, pastoralists who have lived in the East African Rift Valley for centuries. For the Maasai people, the lake isn't just a geographic feature, but it's a sacred place with deep spiritual significance. The Maasai call it the Iwaso Onikaima, meaning the water that turns to salt. Their traditional knowledge includes detailed understanding of the lake's seasonal cycles, which areas are safe to approach, and how to use the surrounding resources without being harmed by the extreme conditions. Today, Lake Natron faces a paradox. Its extreme conditions have protected it from many human impacts, but these same conditions make it incredibly vulnerable to small changes. Understanding the conservation geography here is crucial for protecting one of Africa's most unique ecosystems. The lake currently has limited formal protection status despite its global importance as a flamingo breeding site. This is partly due to the harsh conditions that have historically limited human activity, and the lake's location near the Tanzania and Kenya border complicates conservation efforts, requiring coordination between these two countries with different management systems and priorities. And over the last few decades, growing interest in Lake Natron as a photographic and adventure tourism destination creates new conservation challenges. The ecosystem is adapted to extreme conditions but may be sensitive to even small increases in human disturbance. Flamingo breeding colonies are particularly vulnerable to disturbance during critical nesting periods. Human presence can cause adults to abandon nests, leading to reproductive failure for the entire colony. Effective conservation of Lake Natron requires understanding its unique geographic and ecological characteristics. Traditional conservation approaches designed for more typical ecosystems may not work here. The lake's extreme nature demands specialized management strategies. The most promising approach involves working with the local Maasai communities who have traditional knowledge about sustainable use of the lake's resources. Community-based conservation programs can combine traditional practices with modern scientific understanding. And thus, Lake Natron represents geography at its most extreme, a place where geology, chemistry, and biology combine to create conditions found nowhere else on Earth. From its formation in the active East African Rift Valley to its role as a critical breeding ground for millions of flamingos, this lake demonstrates how extreme environments can support extraordinary amounts of life. Lake Natron reminds us that geography isn't just about mapping features. It's about understanding the complex interactions between Earth systems that create the incredible diversity of environments on our planet. This caustic lake in the East African Rift Valley, with its blood-red water and stone-churning chemistry, represents one extreme of what's possible when geological, chemical, and biological processes align. In our age of rapid environmental change, places like Lake Natron become even more precious. Irreplaceable natural laboratories that help us understand how life adapts to extreme conditions and what we might lose if we don't protect these unique geographical treasures. The geography of Lake Natron is the geography of extremes, and in studying it, we learn not just about this remarkable place, but about the incredible resilience and adaptability of life itself. And as always, if you like this video, give it a like. If you like this content, subscribe to my channel. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.